I want to thank everybody for joining with us today. I especially want to thank everybody flanked beside me and around me for their constant ability to step forward and help Texas respond to these challenges, as well as everybody behind the cameras who are working every single day around the clock to help their fellow Texans in need, regardless of the type of disaster that may be taking place. Well, as we continue to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, we are fully prepared to respond to the oncoming hurricanes of Marco and Laura. We had a robust meeting just moments ago to get up to speed on exactly where we are, what has been done, what may need to be done. And in addition to that, I had the opportunity yesterday to visit with several of the county judges along the coast that could be most heavily impacted by this. Let me start out by saying that because of these ongoing or oncoming hurricanes, I am declaring a state disaster for 23 Texas counties. These counties include all 22 coastal surge counties as designated by the National Weather Service. In addition to that, it also includes Bexar County, which is included for staging and sheltering. In addition to the state disaster that I'm declaring, I'm also declaring and requesting that the President declare a federal emergency for these 23 counties. This will help the state meet critical emergency protection requirements, including evacuation and sheltering. If you'll bear with me, I'm going to run through the counties that are included in the 23 counties in alphabetical order: Aransas, Bexar, Brazoria, Calhoun, Cameron, Chambers, Galveston, Hardin, Harris, Jackson, Jasper, Jefferson, Kennedy, Kleberg, Liberty, Matagorda, Newton, Nueces, Orange, Refugio, San Patricio, Victoria, and Willacy. Obviously, as the storms progress, there may be additional needs to expand the counties that would be subject to the disaster declaration. In visiting with the team behind me earlier, I want to report the following that shows how Texas is prepared to meet these oncoming storms. For the Texas Military Division, which includes the National Guard, they are rostering 860 personnel, helicopters, C-130s, high-profile vehicles, sheltering teams, disinfection teams, as well as mobile testing squads, remembering this key point. And that is, as we are working to perhaps relocate temporarily some people that need to go to shelters, we must be very mindful of the ongoing need to protect against the spread of COVID-19. The Texas Military Division has done a great job all along that they will continue to do during the course of these oncoming storms to make sure that they are capable of providing testing for COVID-19 as well as disinfection as needed, as well as assisting the process of making sure that people will be able to shelter in ways that include distancing practices so as to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. In addition to that, I want to run through some of the action that either has been taken or will be taken. And that is the Texas Division of Emergency Management has activated the Alamo Regional Command Center and has ordered 100 buses to arrive at that center today. The Texas Division of Emergency Management has also activated the state contract for fuel and hygiene services, knowing how much this is needed, especially in times of hurricanes, having seen exactly how this was needed in response to Hurricane Harvey. The Texas Division of Emergency Management, Mass Care, is working with VOADS regarding shelter capacity, feeding, and other support operations with the capacity to shelter at least 5,000 evacuees, which has already been identified. They are also packaging shelter sanitation kits for deployment 35 swift water boat squads along the Texas coast, and 3 high-profile vehicles. The Texas Department of State Health Services has activated 50 ambulances and medical incident support personnel. They also have identified 2 current COVID facilities that can be converted into medical shelters, one in San Antonio and one north of the Houston area, to make sure that we will be able to continue to provide for the needs of anybody who may have COVID challenges. The Texas Department of Transportation has identified high-profile vehicles to support evacuation as well as response, and they have 7 miles of water barriers as well as contractors on call in the event that flooding occurs, especially on Interstate 10 near Winnie, and people may recall in past hurricanes and some other storms that we've had, I-10 in that region can be submerged underwater, and we are prepared for that possibility, especially with it looking like the 2 storms may each cross near the Texas border with Louisiana. The Texas Health and Human Services Commission has activated the state ice and water contract. The Texas Department of Public Safety has rostered their Marine Swift water rescue teams and helicopters with hoist capability, 4 boat squads, 1,000 highway patrol troopers as needed. The Texas Commission on Environmental Quality is fully engaged and prepared to respond as needed, especially respond to any hazardous materials that may arise, whether it be air quality or water quality. They are working with the EPA on air monitoring, and they are in contact with refineries in the area to make sure that any action that is needed will be able to be taken and taken very swiftly. The Texas Parks and Wildlife Division has assigned 65 game wardens to respond. Also, they are providing helicopters, personnel with water rescue, as well as drones and canines. Texas Task Force 1 and Texas Task Force 2 are both fully engaged. They will deploy 150 personnel tomorrow. That will include swift water rescue teams, helicopter evacuation teams. In addition to all of that, the Texas Forest Service is fully engaged, prepared to respond as needed. And then lastly, I will say that I had the opportunity before this to speak to both the regional director for FEMA as well as the head of FEMA in Washington, D.C., Pete Gaynor, both of whom have committed to work collaboratively with Texas to make sure that we have everything that we need to respond to these ongoing or oncoming hurricanes. Lastly, let me say this, and that is it's incredibly important for everybody who could be in the pathway of these storms to constantly heed local warnings about what may be happening in your community, understanding that this is very swift moving and there could be rising water happening very quickly. And be in the informed about what. Do not drive into high water. Turn around, don't drown. We lose so many lives of people who drive into water. We do not need that to be taking place. And so heed local warnings. And then the last thing, and that is, as we respond to these oncoming hurricanes, it is essential that everybody in every community continue to do everything that you can to maintain your distance from others, to remember the safety practices that you have adopted over the past few months, and that is to wear a mask, to sanitize your hands, to use all the strategies that now have proven to be so successful in Texas. What we've seen over the past few weeks is an ongoing decline in the number of people testing positive for COVID-19, an ongoing decline and hospitalizations and an ongoing improvement in the COVID-19 numbers. We cannot allow these oncoming hurricanes to set us back in the advancements that we've made in combating COVID-19. With that, I will pass it to the Chief of the Texas Division of Emergency Management, Chief Nim Kidd.
Thank you, Governor. And to echo the Governor's comments, I need the public to really pay attention to this storm. Right now is the time to start to prepare if you have not done so already. We've had a lot of weather briefings, the National Weather Service, National Hurricane Center, a high degree of uncertainty in the forecast of this storm. However, models do show over 15 inches of rain and potentially up to a Category 3, which would be a major disaster for us. So please, local partners, take the time to prepare now. Very appreciative of our local county judges and mayors that are totally engaged in supporting us, especially the men and women that are standing behind us and their people that are out in the field, and all the folks that have been working in this room around the clock for a very long time now, Governor. Our team is ready. We will work on this together.
Thank you, Chief. And to follow up on that last comment, then we'll take some questions, and that is, for people who haven't heard, we are prepared, especially for Laura, to turn into a potential Category 3 hurricane by the time that it makes landfall. And there are some projections that push that onto the Texas coastline. And so this is the time when everyone needs to begin preparing for these oncoming hurricanes and make sure that you take action to save your lives. Remember, your life is far more valuable than your property. Your property can be replaced, your life cannot. Make sure you do everything you can to save your life and the lives of others. We'll take a few questions. With regard to the testing information that has come into the Texas Department of State Health Services, there was a backlog for two primary reasons. One, there was a limitation in the number of test results they could process. That limitation has now been fixed, and there is no more backlog because of the limitation in being able to import into the system the number of test results. There may still be some lingering challenges with some of the private labs and their ability to give us immediate, updated test results. We are continuing to work with those private labs for a quicker turnaround. So all that said, the data that we have now is far more accurate than what we had last month and maybe even a couple of weeks ago. That data should be very close to being perfectly accurate in the coming weeks and coming months. Hence, we're now to a point where we have a far more reliable positivity rate, as well as a far more accurate number of people testing positive. All that said, one very important fact for people to remember is that first, anybody who has tested positive, they would have been provided that information immediately by the healthcare provider. Second, a very important fact for people to follow as we continue to respond to COVID-19 is the number of people hospitalized who were tested positive for COVID-19. That data is very accurate and very current. And one thing that we have seen across the entire state is a reduction in the number of people hospitalized because of COVID-19. That is the most positive sign that we could see. All right. So as I have worked my way through the COVID response, it's important that we base our decisions upon data as well as the advice of doctors. Every decision that I've made has been a decision that is in the best interest of the health and safety of the people of the state of Texas, as well as trying to do that, maintaining businesses being as open as possible. As we have seen as a result of decisions that I've implemented, including the requiring that people wear masks, including the requirement that establishments like bars be closed, both of those recommendations were based upon the consensus of the entire medical community. And the proof is in the pudding, because the proof is that in the aftermath of those requirements on my part, we have seen a reduction in the number of people testing positive, a reduction in hospitalizations, and an improvement in the state of Texas and its response to COVID-19. Texas is far better positioned today in its response to COVID-19 than it was at the time that I put those executive orders in place. And Texas will continue to improve because of people being very diligent and making sure that they reduce the spread of COVID-19 by wearing a mask, by distancing themselves from others. And that in turn will allow us to proceed down the pathway of being able to open up more businesses as well as open up our schools.
One more question here and then one more.
Governor, I know your team met with the attorney that walked from Fort Hood here to talk to you. Do you have any plans to speak to him yourself?
I don't know what the current status of that is. I know that when he arrived here, I actually was in Fort Worth and that I've been engaged in some other activities. And so it's my understanding that he's had the opportunity to visit with key leaders in the governor's office.
Last question. Great. We're out.
Thank
guys.
you.
Appreciate it.
If I could add one thing, just so you'll know, one reason why we're departing is I'm going immediately to talk to all of the county judges of these counties that are in this disaster declaration so that we can personally and immediately connect with them and make sure they have all of their needs met. Thank you.